My name is Nep, and welcome to Exceptional Individuals Thursday webinar. And today we are looking at the pop culture of Tourette Syndrome, or tic disorders, any involuntary movement that we cannot help. We did OCD last week. Tourette is on the same wavelength as OCD, but arguably even more physical in terms of how it presents itself. Even harder to keep it under the surface. We're going to be looking at the wide range of it. Hopefully, a lot of you will know that Tourette's isn't just about swearing. Actually, it's a really small percentage of it. However, that's what the cheeky media thinks it is. Be prepared, we're going to be looking at a lot of negative representations. That being said, there are actually some good representations out there. So we are also going to be looking at some of the ways that the media has done it right. We're going to look at some historical context, so hopefully it'll be a nice bit of edutainment for everyone. Today, we predominantly will be focusing on Tourette syndrome, but traditionally we look at what is easily defined as neurodivergent condition. The reason why I say easily is that there really isn't a this or that. For instance, is Tourette's part of umbrella? Say it depends on your personal perspective. Is Tourette's a condition which means due to how your brain is wired, you think differently to the majority? I would say yes. With that definition, it does count. The reason why some people may argue against it, however, is that it is something which you aren't typically born with. Tourette's does develop quite early on. We're looking at between 5 to 10 years old, but it's not from day one. It isn't something that can be cured, actually. It is something you can manage. For many reasons, I would say it does count. But as I mentioned many times before, it isn't as concrete as, is it neurodevelopmental? It either is or it isn't. Whereas for Tourette's neurodiversity, there's a little bit of wiggle room. Oh, here's me, blah de blah. Oh, yes, I always like sharing a little update. Look what I got through the post the other day. Yes, everyone, it is a legit certificate of me doing stuff. Yes, I've got a master's in neuroscience. It's legit. Very excited about that. Here's our lovely team. Today you got myself, you got April, and you got Jess in the chat. The last webinar we have uploaded is the geography of dyspraxia. Do check them out if you want to get up to date with what we've done previously. Tourette's in pop culture. Believe it or not, pop culture hasn't been overly friendly to people with Tourette. I know, what's going on there? Pop as in popular, more or less, most people will know it. It's if I say, hey, do you know who Peggy Mitchell is on EastEnders? Even if you don't watch EastEnders, you'll know who Peggy is. Peggy's no longer around. We all know who she is. So a lot of the references I'm going to be saying today, you may have not watched them, but you probably may have heard of them. And they're baked into our subconscious. When we look at why are we spending all day, every day, trying to teach people about the benefits and the different ways of supporting people with neurodivergent, it's because media screwed us over. We've got to understand it so we can unravel it. The basic idea of today is exploring Tourette syndrome. We're going to be looking how it's portrayed in media, film, TV. Essentially, media is anything which people can digest and gain information from. That information doesn't necessarily have to be correct, but it's just information. So now we know what we're looking at, we can get into it. There are probably some terminologies that you're not familiar with. Let's make it a little bit educational. If you do know these words, just play along. But I didn't know a lot of them. We've got chronic tic disorder. This is when you've had tics for more than a year. Tics is any sort of involuntary movement or sound. When you could be clicking your neck, you could be moving around. It shares a lot of overlap with OCD. It's like a spectrum. You go like OCD, which is very common, then tic related, and then chronic tic disorders. If you want to know what pandas is, it's a combo of all of them. But the term isn't widely used. We've got cognitive control. This is regulating thoughts and behavior. So the way our brains work, say we want to say something, our brain, yeah, you could say it if you like, and then you say it. But with Tourette's, the brain, it just comes out. You lack that regulation. Comorbidities is just co-occurring. Essentially, having Tourette's, you probably have ADHD. You probably also might have autism. The likelihood of having OCD is really common. We don't fit neatly into boxes. Involuntary swearing. This is the standard archetype for Tourette. However, super rare. Honestly, so little people with Tourette's swear. This has got to be something that we're going to really overcome today. Then we've got functional movement disorder. This is the more physical Tourette's movements rather than vocal. We've got latent advantages. Latent doesn't sound overly positive, but this is talking about the benefit. And we're not just talking about the negative Tourette. There's a lot of examples where Tourette's has been used to people's advantages. We're going to be talking about the guy who invented the dictionary. And he had quite heavy Tourette's, to be honest. Did that help him? We'll find out. Would chronic means it never stops or that it keeps on happening? Chronic means it happens for a long period of time to a significant level. Is it interfering with your life? Yes or no? If yes, okay. Is it happening for more than a year? If yes, now we've got chronic. Chronic doesn't necessarily involve the severity, but it does mean that it has to affect you significantly. Then we've got psychic illnesses, group exhibiting symptoms without a physical cause. Again, Tourette's. Is there physically no physical disorder to you, but is it a mental disorder which is affecting you physically? Motor tics. Sounds like a car, but no. Motor is just like moving around. We often talk about motor disorders for dyspraxia. This could be sudden, repetitive behavior, very similar to those of autism and stimming in many ways. Neuropsychological studies, aka research. Phonic disorders, phonics as in phonological, so speech. Provisional tic disorders. If you have tics for less than a year, so this is like your baby Tourette's. No, you don't quite have everything you need yet, but keep it up and we might give you a Tourette's disorder. This can go away. It's the early stages. Then we've got Tourette syndrome. Do know, not everyone with tics has Tourette's. It's one of those things. If you are bad at spelling, doesn't mean you have dyslexia, but it is one of the traits of dyslexia. And the same tics doesn't mean you have Tourette syndrome, but it is one of the characteristics of Tourette syndrome. How would you explain the difference between tics and stimming? That is a good question. Stimming is typically attributed to those on the autistic spectrum, and stimming is a result of being overwhelmed. When you are overwhelmed, it's like a way of regrounding yourself, and stimming you might be in a really stressful situation, so you might be like rocking, and that is easing your brain. It's like when we swear in day-to-day life, when we stab our toe, we do it because it relieves a tiny bit of pressure. It's been proven in science that swearing is actually good for you. Tics, on the other hand, is completely involuntary and is done because of a compulsion to do it rather than relaxing. It's a good point. I would like to explore that a little bit more. One is typically related to Tourette's, one is typically related to autism, but as in terms of the direct difference, I would have to look into that. We've got one is involuntary, stimming not so much, though it becomes second nature to us. Right, I do agree, but I was a bit reluctant to say that because for some, stimming, it can't be helped. It depends on the individual. There's a little bit nuances. I should state that at the beginning. I have OCD, I don't have Tourette. I work a lot with people with Tourette's, not a personal expert in it. A quick overview of what we're going to be looking at. We're going to be looking at just understanding Tourette's a little bit more. We're going to be looking at some of the potential advantages because TV does have some good representation. We're going to be learning about notable individuals. I don't really like the term notable. It makes us sound like we're not worthy. I'm not notable, but they're just people you may know. Essentially, some people may not be celebrities, but are still know. We're going to look at how the media analyzes Tourette's, and we're also going to be looking at some speculative disorders. For instance, when you Google people with Tourette, you'll get this lovely bunch. However, notes are, what are you doing here? You probably didn't have Tourette's. There are some people who we contribute to having a condition, but we're just making stuff up now. There's no concrete evidence. However, Lewis Capaldi, Billie Eilish, absolutely. David Beckham says he does, but it looks like it's more OCD. But who am I to say? Howard Hughes, again, more OCD. These conditions, they overlap quite heavily. My first question is, why do misunderstanding about Tourette's continue in media? I want to know, why are we still thinking it's about Tourette's? This was taken from a YouTube video I found recently. It seems to be our go-to idea. Tourette's? Why is that what we think? You'd like a research? Yeah. We only know what we know, and we know what we know because we spend half our life sat in front of the TV or scrolling through TikTok. It's interesting that while we're going to be talking a lot about classic media today, social media is playing a massive part. If you were to do a quick search on Tourette's on TikTok or Instagram, nearly all of it is about propalalia, the swearing part of it. Swearing, tics grab attention. Absolutely. You're walking down the streets and you go chew, no one cares. You go down and say, it's going to grab people's attention. But while it is less prominent, it's easier to observe. The sad truth is, a lot of people that I found loads of forums online where people were saying, my child has Tourette's, should I not take him to a wedding? Things like that where people felt embarrassed or felt that they shouldn't be bringing it. Not right. Let's look at some stats first, because though, is this even a big deal? How many people actually have Tourette's? This image on the left is quite interesting. It's so tiny, it was made for, but I'll try and translate it. It says about most people with Tourette's, or 63% of people with Tourette's also have ADHD. That's interesting. You're more likely than not likely to have Tourette. Anxiety is nearly 50%. And then we've got learning disabilities, autism spectrum, speech problems, behavioral, depression. You can't really talk about these conditions individually. This is why there's no pure examples, because people don't fit neatly into boxes. In terms of misunderstandings or misswearing, that's the number one. It's just not even accurate. It's like saying people with dyslexia can't read. No, generally, a tiny percentage of people with dyslexia cannot read. The vast majority can, but it's this one archetype. Or those with ADHD, well, they get distracted really easy. It's this one thing that gets perpetuated time and time again. Can be cured with treatment. It can be managed with treatment. It can't be cured. There is a difference between management and treatment, and it affects few people. No, it affects a lot of people. This is the classic Tourette's iceberg, where you see a few things, but actually it impacts so much. You know, we all got rage, behavioral issues, handwriting difficulties, impulse control, ADHD. It's really interesting. But when we think about it, people just think about local tics. It affects about 1% of people. We don't have the exact number. Typically, it starts in childhood. 5 to 10 is when most people get diagnosed for it. Makes sense, because a lot of people with neurodevelopmental conditions normally start speaking later in life. 5 is when we start to think, wait a sec, what's going on here? Involuntary movements, sounds and tics are often occurs with ADHD and OCD. Coprolalia is super rare. What is Tourette's? Essentially, it's genetics and environmental. It's part of your DNA. Does it run in the family? Absolutely. Does it depend on pollutants or different things in our environment, how we're brought up, the type of support we get early on? Absolutely. Truth is, the jury's still out and a lot more research is needed. While you can have therapy and medication, there isn't a cure. But it's more about learning to work with it and to get society to be more understanding than necessarily trying to get rid of it altogether. We know that stereotypes are super prevalent, and that is due to lack of awareness. While with most things, like I said, can't be cured, they do tend to soften with age. That's become to coping mechanism and a number of factors. It's why it seems more apparent in children than anywhere else. We've got some basic knowledge. Let's look at pop culture. Who has Tourette's? And are they presenting it in a good way, a negative way? Let's look at some TV, some films, some celebrities, some theatre. Let's get a good all-round understanding. Who do you think has Tourette's? Again, this can be a cartoon character, it could be a celebrity, anyone that you know who has Tourette's that you're aware of. I'm not expecting us to know, are they diagnosed, even if you believe they have. The amount of confirmed people is quite small. Do you know what, Emma? Pete and Big Brother doesn't feature on this. I kept thinking, do people still know who he is? I liked Pete. He was my favourite character. However, there was a lot of issues taken on this series on whether or not they were taking advantage of him for entertainment reasons. Because when they put him on Big Brother, they knew he would be controversial. Was it a little bit manipulative? On the other hand, though, he raised massive amounts of awareness, and he was such a lovable character that actually he did a lot of good for the series. It's hard to say is an overall positive or negative. A friend's child was recently diagnosed. Melanie West from Ally McBeal, yes, that is one that I'm aware of. I haven't seen the series, though. Billie Eilish, yep, Billie Eilish is a really good example. Pete from Big Brother, Pete from BB. Nice. Anyone else? What about this little Funko Pop? No one who he's trying to represent? Honestly, it doesn't look too much like him. I think he's a little bit podgier. Lewis is supposed to be. To be fair, none of those Funko Pops ever look like anyone they're meant to. You might say, nah, this isn't pop culture. This was done hundreds of years ago. I would say it's still pop culture. Because have any of you not maybe read a dictionary, but have heard of a dictionary? If you have heard of a dictionary, we've got this fella to thank. Samuel Johnson was the founder of the one version of the dictionary, arguably the most popular dictionary. If you look at the most famous biography ever created was by a guy called Boswell, and he wrote his biography on Johnson. Johnson must have been an interesting person. I paraphrased this because it was written in like old-timey English and made no sense. But in a nutshell, it said, whilst talking and thinking, Samuel would often tilted his head, shook it, moved his body back and forth, rubbed his knee. He'd made sounds like half whistles, chuckling, saying, "Too, too, too." After a heated argument, he would blow out his breath like a whale. There are numerous examples of this person who is incredibly influential. He did the dictionary, and whether or not he could have done it without his Tourette's is interesting. This was a portrait done of him, and even then you can see him doing a kick in motion. This is one of the first examples of Tourette's being publicly acknowledged, but also interestingly because it's done in a very positive light. Because this guy was a bona fide genius. Let's look at some more current celebrities. Any of these, just select which ones you knew had Tourette's. We've got Billie Eilish, singer. We've got Dan Acknell, Ghostbuster. Samuel Johnson, hopefully you know him now, the dictionary fella. We've got Tim Howard, goalkeeper in America. Lewis Capaldi, sometimes a Funko Pop, other times singer-songwriter. Lead, who apparently is a social media influencer. Mohammed Al-Dolf-Ra, who basketball. Jim Esquil, Jeremy is a BMXer. Steve Wallace is a motorsports person. Andre is an author. Again, if you know these people, you let me know. I don't know all of them, but these are all interesting. All of you have selected the real big celebrity. Easy to go with the big headline ones, but I also think it's important to show that lots of people who have been very successful have none of you selected the Ghostbuster guy. No, really? Okay, never mind. Samuel Johnson, while I would imagine many of you have never heard of this person before today, he was probably the most influential out of all of them. Their professions vary quite dramatically. The reason I put Mozart in it, they've got beef with Mozart. Don't get me wrong, he was great. At 21, he was smashing life. But people keep saying he has Tourette's. If you Google celebrity for Tourette, Mozart comes up. Show me some facts. There are no facts to say that Mozart had Tourette's. Don't get me wrong, maybe he has some qualities, but we've got to be careful about just giving people labels because we feel like it. These people, as far as I'm aware, they have all personally stated they have Tourette's or Tourette-like characteristics. Moving on from celebrities, because arguably they're actually a better example because they're real life. How have TV and media portrayed it? I wouldn't say any of you have watched Ticket. I think it's a Bollywood film. But there are lots of examples all around the world of how Tourette have been shown. Even ones that try to show it in a positive light typically have also shown it in a bit of a negative light. A good quote from this book that was in Spanish, which I had to use Google Translator for. Essentially, I might be slightly off with what it's saying, but more or less it's saying Tourette's has not been adjusted to reality and has been used to ridicule characters, exaggerate symptoms in a comic or grotesque tone, or as a characteristic tone of a cruel and evil individual. People with Tourette's aren't normally depicted as lovable scamps. We're normally evil people with mustaches who swear to make a point. The history of film hasn't been overly friendly toward those with Tourette's. There are examples where it has been not just a positive portrayal, but one that has moved the discussion forward. Good old Quincy. This was only one episode, but this helped pass the orphan drug bill. I don't know. Jess, as an American, do you know much about that? I don't know too much about it, but from my understanding, an orphan drug is a drug which would be too expensive for the everyday person to have, so it's offset by government. With Tourette's, medication is often used to control it, but essentially it wasn't accessible. This episode was used to help get that bill passed. I think that's more or less it, but it's a great example of how media, when done right, can be really beneficial. It doesn't all have to be negative. Yeah, Quincy was great TV. It was always on Gold or TV catch-up. I was always watching. American Thing, which is real cheesy, is a Hallmark film. Now for some negative one. And don't get me wrong, I love South Park. But, oh god, it was a doozy for it. You could argue because South Park is really satire, if you are really smart and you read between the lines, they are purposely taking the mickey of society as a whole. But if you're a child who watches South Park, which you probably shouldn't, you'll probably get the wrong intention across. So there's an episode called Tourette, where Clem, this lovely fella, he pretends to have Tourette's in order to say offensive things. Why this episode is offensive is because it shows just the swearing side, but it does show that the fact that people who take the mickey out of it are causing a lot of harm to individuals who genuinely struggle with it. I think there's a little bit of redemption to be had in South Park, but it does require a more of an analytical eye to see the silver lining. I haven't seen this film. Have any of you? It's about a male gigolo. No? No one's seen the Gigolo film? Okay. I would say, I'm sure this film is hilarious, and I also have a dark sense of humor. In terms of representation, bad. They make it seem like this kind of explosive anger, and this is, again, a very rare instance, and it is purely used for comic relief. That's the thing with media. I have no issue with jokes, but you've got to balance that out. If you do like it with humor, you then have to show the other side. Like I said with South Park, it was a little bit more balanced, where this is very much one-dimensional. On this list, here are a bunch of films that also show individuals or characters with Tourette's in them. Have you seen any of them? Depending on if you've seen them or not, is how influential they are. Matchstick Men with Nicolas Cage is quite a well-known one. Some of these are quite obscure. Not another teen movie. They are terrible. She then goes on to say, sorry, I have Tourette. I have seen this movie, and I'm going to say there is zero redeeming qualities about how they depict Tourette's. It is very much to say, she swore, but this is aimed at adolescents. Some of the others, we'll talk about a bit later. Not all of them are negative portrayals. Typically, the comedies tend to be negative. The other ones might use them as minor characters. Other time, they'll be related to the entire plot. Have you heard of any of these characters with Tourette's? There's a film about What About Bob? And the main character has a combo of Tourette's. Also schizophrenia, you could argue. While is nice to see comedy represented, it probably is going more on the extreme side of things. You got the Wedding Singer, which is just like a one-off character. I want to say a drag queen? Maybe not. Isn't just a minor character though, George. Also got Vincent, haven't seen that much. The Road Within, essentially that character who is in Misfits, he essentially always does that kind of teen anguish character. Motherless, Brooklyn, essentially Edward Norton, quite a good representation. Wedding Crashers, so many wedding related films. Todd is seen as a snarky negative character. And then Sons of Sunshine. It's a really broad church in terms of how many positive, negative, minor. I actually sometimes think having a minor character with Tourette's, which is neither positive nor negative, is actually quite a positive thing because it normalizes. April would have put Melanie West from Ally McBeal. April, I was going to put Ally McBeal, but the only reason I didn't is I couldn't find any videos or for clips that showed the Tourette in it. But I did do some research. If any of you haven't seen Matchstick Men, classic Nicolas Cage film, and this is a narcotic con artist with Tourette's. You know the whole, oh, I have autism, but actually I have a genius memory and I'm going to help solve this mystery. Yeah, this kind of similar. Yeah, I've got Tourette's. It allows me to put all the information together and fix the issue of the puzzle. But yeah, a bit cheesy, but it also is showing Tourette's in a more complex narrative rather than that kind of one-dimensional thing. More or less, not too bad. Let's look at some documentaries because, don't get me wrong, film and TV are really interesting to watch, but they have an agenda. Their agenda is to entertain at the very top. They are going to use the most entertaining parts of the condition to enhance the narrative and push it forward. Where documentaries would change it up a little bit. Their main goal is to give a slice of life to show people what it really is like. Some great documentaries, we've got Tourette's. I swear I can sing. Funny title. This is just about the journey of someone with Tourette's and their kind of journey onto stardom. What you will find is a lot of people with Tourette's who are singers don't have Tourette's when they're singing, which is really interesting. The way from what I've been able to understand is that with Tourette's, it's essentially the brain has a pattern and it feels like it's locking. When you do your tick, it allows the gears to move again. But when you are singing or performing or doing activity, your mind is already busy. All the places for it to go off on a tangent are already preoccupied. Maybe think of it like an octopus with all its arms. If it's got an arm free, it's going to be waving it about or ticking. But if it's busy holding everything, it's not able to do that. Yeah, similar to stammers as well. Very true. Another documentary, which is worth watching, is I have Tourette's, but Tourette's doesn't have me. It is very good for showing an honest, diverse portrayal. Then we got John's Not Mad, which shows one case example throughout his life, which is really interesting. This is a real example of someone who does swear. This affects John in a very extreme way. While I don't think we should be overly representing the swearing Tourette's because it's not very representational of the wider population, people still do have that. When people swear, you've got to be able to realize it's not intentional, they can't help it. Imagine being John and trying to get a job. Be really difficult, or even to maintain relationships or friends, particularly if the Tourette's are quite violent with the outbursts. But yeah, worth watching. April says, the documentary looks familiar. I think there was a young boy called Greg who also had Tourette's in this documentary. I don't remember Greg. But yeah, maybe they should a few ones. There's also examples of music and theatre where it's being represented. This was apparently a terrible musical. It got cancelled really quickly. Not a great example, but it was in my life. Arguably about a lemon. I don't know what is going on in this scene. Was it closed quickly because of Tourette's? I don't think so. Maybe it just was a bit tone deaf or not that good. But it has been represented in theatre at least. More relevant is Billie Eilish. Billie Eilish is amazing. She is unapologetically themselves. Do check that out. Another singer, and there's quite a lot of singers to be honest that have Tourette's. Maybe because when they are singing, the Tourette's doesn't affect them, that they feel it's like some sort of calm period, maybe. This is another American example, but this is an American Idol contestant. My question is, how can media improve portrayals of mental health disorders like Tourette syndrome? We've got a lot of work to do. We've got both positive, negative, neutral, documentaries, cartoons, film, TV. What do you think is the best way to create a positive representation of Tourette's? I would also say, how do we do it in comedy in particular? I love comedy. I'm not all about PC police and get rid of all the fun in the world. How can we have fun with something without essentially increasing the likelihood that other people are going to feel bad about themselves or get bullied? We've got be realistic. Absolutely. More documentary, less entertainment. Yet documentaries are good because they are what they are. They are very real and raw. We've got using realistic examples of diagnosis rather than just saying, all right, let's pick one characteristic that we like to look up and focus on that. We're looking at the entire profile of the person. More dynamic, more complex characters, yet integrate it into their entire life. When we talk about it, all we're saying is that you can't simply be defined by one element of your life. Essentially, it's your whole life together which creates the person. Quite often in poor scripted comedies, they do focus on that one element, mostly due to time, but also you've got to appreciate baggage comes along with that. Quick summary, just to wrap up with. We talked about inaccurate descriptions. There are a lot of poor descriptions. I would say Ally McBeal, South Park, even episodes of The Simpsons, overly positive. These are what people think of when they think of Tourette. There's a character in South Park called Twitch who's always twitching, and that's the character I always think of when I think of Tourette's. But we must know that there are positive representations. There are some really good examples. It's not all bad, and we should be really promoting the positive ones. For instance, like Quincy, Seventh Heaven, we didn't talk about, but that's another good example of how it can reduce misconceptions. Know that media is very powerful. We might think it's harmless, just a laugh here or there, but it does either increase or decrease the public's understanding of conditions. We all watch TV these days. I don't blame you. It's easy. It's relaxing after a hard day's work. But what we are all seeing is educating us. Even if we don't think, when you're watching Emmerdale at night, or I don't know, whatever you watch on TV, you are being educated, whether or not it's good education or bad education. We need to make sure that the representation are done in a respectful way. April says, I mainly remember Melanie from Ally McBeal for her loud vocal tics. I see vocal is there. If you thought, oh, interesting that, I'd love to learn a little bit more. Love to do a cheeky deep dive. We've got a bunch of references here to make sure that it was as accurate as possible. One I read was, I skimmed all of them, but Mozart in the neurological department I read, and yeah, no evidence for it. Some of the newer ones about Stop It, It's Not Tourette's, but a new type of mass social illness, which was controversial, but interesting. Samuel Johnson in the medical world, that is the really famous deep dive into how Tourette affected one of the most influential linguistics in all of Western history. Some really good ones there. But if you do have Tourette's, as I always like to say, you are welcome to gain support from us. The whole reason we do these is to make sure that people are aware that you can get support in the workplace. If you're in the UK, if you have Tourette's or Tourette-like characteristics, you do not have to be diagnosed. You can seek support with us. Just go for a workplace needs assessment and you can check it out and you can get equipment, support, coaching, mentoring, all of that lovely good stuff. Now, our next webinar, because we keep these coming, we keep the show going. The next one is exceptional people with dyscalculia and dysgraphia. This is similar to pop culture ones, but we are focusing on real people who have dyscalculia and dysgraphia. Let's face it, these are the more obscure ones. We know what dyslexia is, we know what dyspraxia is, but not many people know about dyscalculia, which is like the math version of dyslexia, or dysgraphia, which is more about handwriting than it is about reading. We're going to be looking at real people. An example is Cher. Go on event type exceptional individuals or go on our website. If you do want to catch up, do go on our YouTube channel, click subscribe, and you can catch up on all our previous webinars. Look, lovely ones here, 6,000. Do check that out. If you want to get in contact and you want to know how to work with us, go to exceptionalindividuals.com or drop us an email. My email is nat@com, or if you just want to email generic every person, you can email admin@accept.k. We also have a brand new phone line. If you call this number now, you will actually get through to us. It's real now. It's not just a fake number. We are done. I hope you found that useful, interesting, got a little bit more enlightenment, and yeah, keep being you and all that lovely motivational stuff.